How to be a good psychologist? Here are 5 things you should never do as a psychologist. I've been a clinical psychologist for 8 years, and this is my opinion. In today's video, I'm talking about the 5 things you should not do as a good psychologist. I'll not say if these are examples that I have experienced other psychologists do. It might be, it might not. I'll try to explain my opinion as thoroughly as possible, but you might find that you don't agree. If you want to, you can share your own examples or opinions, or feel free to chat in the comment field below. I'd love to read it. So, let's get started. The first thing that you should not do as a psychologist is forget to analyze the client and just start advising. When we as psychologists see a client, we have 2 jobs. One is assessment and one is therapy or psychoeducation. In my professional opinion, you cannot do one without the other. We need to analyze the client first. Here, not only talking about diagnostic assessment, but also getting a sense of the client's history, past experience, and personality or personal preference. It might be tempting to just jump right into advice giving, to get started with change right away. But just because something might work for one client doesn't mean that it will work for another. Or I might say it as strongly as what helps one might harm another. A psychologist first needs to listen and listen. What is it that the client really needs from us? This is so that we, for one, don't give wrong advice, but also that the client doesn't feel misunderstood. If we skip on sort of the matching treatment or therapy correctly with the client, then it's likely that the client will feel that they're not profiting, that it's not working, but also it will install a feeling in them that they cannot be helped, that there is something wrong with them that cannot be fixed. It might be that standard CBT is totally the correct thing for that client, but you just don't know that until you've done your own analysis. I know that some psychologists rely on the analysis from their colleagues. In the way that one psychologist does the assessment and the other one does the treatment. I can see many difficulties with this, and I would hope that the psychologist number 2 does their own analysis with the client anyways, just so that they don't waste the client's time with unhelpful or mismatched treatment. So, next up, number 2 thing that you should not do as a psychologist. Be late. I again won't say if I've heard numerous stories of clients sitting and waiting in the waiting room for their therapist. Maybe I had, maybe I haven't. But I will say that this is not okay. When we see a psychologist, it is because we have swollen down our pride and decided to get some outside help. This can be a huge step for many. The psychologist being late or letting the client wait in the waiting room after the appointment was supposed to get started is a no-go. It will feel to the client that we're disrespecting their time, but also their case. Like something else is more important or someone else is more important. Mostly, when I see clients, they are struggling one way or another. This means that I have to be extra careful of what I signal to them. Leading with signaling that they are not important is not how a therapy session should start. A good psychologist should be here on time for your service. Also, many clients feel uneasy or nervous before seeing their therapist. This is quite normal. This is also a reason why we should not have the client seated outside in the waiting room longer than needed. Next. Number 3, no-go, according to me, is talking about yourself, especially about your own trauma. A psychologist should not talk about themselves to their clients. This one comes with some buts, because I can think of cases where using yourself as an example can work. But my preference or advice will be to use examples that are not your own. When we're treating clients, it should be about them. Often clients with low self-worth will find it unfamiliar that it's all of a sudden all about them. They would rather talk about you or how you are. As psychologists, it's our job to help the client put focus on themselves and their own needs. Talking too much about yourself can take the focus away from this. I also think it's important to signal that you as psychologists are a professional. This is not girls' talk or friend meeting. This is about you assisting a client in their personal development. The last part of this one, and one that I really think you should not do as a psychologist, is to share your own trauma story with your client. As psychologists, we can get a bit hardened with regards to listening to hard stuff. Therefore, we might tend to think that others are able to hear it too. Other than that, I don't think that you should use the client's time to talk about yourself. I also think that it's especially important that you do not share traumatic experiences with your client. The client hearing something really bad that happened to you can cause the client to almost feel secondary traumatization, even if it's the same thing that happened to them. I don't see how sharing your own trauma experience can ever be useful for the client, because two situations are never the same anyways. And how it was for you is likely not the same as how it was for the client. And again, it's not about you, it's about the client. It's your role to help the client feel that it's all about them. If you want to let the client know that bad things happen to other people and not just them, then try with the question. Do you know of other people who have experienced something similar? And then talk to the client about that. Next one. As a psychologist, the fourth thing you should not do is become too emotional. When giving therapy, a psychologist should not let their feelings out. What do I mean by this? Unless the psychologist is doing a specific treatment form, requiring them to sort of present the client with their own feelings, there are some forms of treatment where we can use this, such as in radically open dialectical behavior therapy. But if this is not the case, then the psychologist should keep their own emotions under control. Of course, there are ways where we can use sort of designed emotional responses to help the client, but this is not the same as the psychologist just sort of reacting emotionally out of the blue. I might or I might not have had some stories about psychologists starting to cry in a session and the client feeling awkward or that they felt like they had to support the psychologist. Psychologists should be aware that some clients are better at translating or understanding the meaning of emotional reactions than others. So being too emotional can be misunderstood by the client or confuse them. A general advice is to make sure that the client is the center of attention and that you try to match their emotions, such as if they're happy, then you match happy, and if they're sad, you match sort of a sad brow. If they're concerned, you look concerned, but not more than the client. And control it under all circumstances. All psychologists should have the ability to practice emotional control and regulation, and we should use it, in my opinion. If a psychologist is not okay due to their own life things, I would advise, just like I advise some of my clients, then take a sick day or get some help. If you cannot make sure that you don't cry at work, then take a day off or pay a visit to your own psychologist. None of your clients deserve an irritable or unstable psychologist. So good psychologists should take a sick day if they need it. Last one, number 5. A psychologist should not, in my opinion, lie. A psychologist should remember that just because the client is struggling with something, this doesn't mean that they're stupid. Of course, we all know that, but I just thought I would say it anyways. Of course, one thing is for the psychologist to misspeak or make mistakes in the information they give, but lying on purpose is not a good idea. If you lie to your client, you likely have to keep track of the lie. My clients often tend to remember like elephants, and I often hear them quote me from things I said long ago. So lying is just not practical. And if the client susses that you have lied about a thing, what will that do to their trust or confidence in you as a psychologist? I think we as psychologists should stay as close to the truth towards our clients as possible. Of course, again, don't overshare and don't make it about you in the session, but try to be as honest as possible when asked. If you lie, the client will likely get a sense you're off and feel uncomfortable and unsafe. And if they find out you will have a lot of repairing work to do. As psychologists are excelling in knowing how to sort of phrase matters or sending the ball back to the client and putting them in focus, I think we should use that skill instead of neglecting the truth. So, these were the five. A good psychologist should not forget to analyze the client, be late, talk about themselves, become too emotional, and lie. Do you have other examples, or what were your thoughts? I think this is all we have time for. What was your takeaway from today's video? As always, feel free to take away the information you can use, if any, and leave the rest. Hopefully you found that today's topic made sense and I did not waste your time. Please like or subscribe so my channel can grow. Take care and see you for the next one.